Jai Sitaram. Ayodhya chapter 21, Thou shalt not go, continued. In the previous section, we saw how Lakshmana responds to Mother Kaushalya. He states that it is inconceivable that Rama has to go off to the forest after abandoning the kingdom, all at the bidding of a woman. Lakshmana says that the king has taken leave of his senses. His senses are enslaved by passion and lust for Kaikeyi. There is not a single person in this world who can find any fault in Rama. So why should he deserve this fate? It does not make any sense. Lakshmana also tells Lord Rama that he is going to be there to support him. Rama should take over this dominion before a lot of other people know. If any of the Ayodhya Vasis, or even if Bharata himself were to oppose Rama and Lakshmana, people who oppose Rama and Lakshmana are going to meet their death. And it's just as simple as that. Verse 12. Protsahito ayam Kaikeya sadushto yadihi pita amitra bhuto nisangam badhyatam api. I see no injustice, no sin in taking the life of that wicked man, our unnatural father, who at the instigation of Kaikeyi allies himself with our foes and works evil to us. Or I would temper justice with mercy and immure him in the depths of a dungeon where he may drag on his miserable days and repent if he can. Verse 13. Gurur apya valiptasya karya karyam ajanatah utpatham pratipannasya karyam bhavati shasanam. The books lay down that a teacher and a father deserve summary chastisement at our hands if he is intoxicated with boundless pride and is lost to the sense of right and wrong. Verse 14. Balamesha kimashritya hetum va purusha rishabha datum ichchati Kaikeya rajyam sthitam idam tava. How dared he promise his kingdom to Kaikeyi when it is yours by every right, human and divine, when he knows that he has no right to alienate it? Did he count upon his valor and that of his armies to chase you from here? Or is he resolved to fulfill his word to Kaikeyi at any cost? Verse 15. Tvaya chaiva maya chaiva kritva vairam anuttamam kasyaha shaktihi shriyam datum bharataya arishasana. O chastiser of enemies, let him know that it is utterly and absolutely impossible now and forever. What a mighty hero he is to hope to defeat Rama and his devoted servant Lakshmana and to place Bharata on the throne of the Kaushalas. Verse 16. Anuraktaha asmi bhavena bhrataram devi tatvatah satyena dhanusha chaiva dattena ishtena te shape. Oh, my dear mother, Rama is my brother. He is the object of my reverence and sincere love. And hence I solemnly swear on the truth that I hold dear, on the bow that I wield, on the gifts that I have bestowed, on the worship I have offered to the bright gods. Verse 17. Deeptam agnim aranyam va yadi Ramah pravekshyate pravishtam tatramam devi tvam purvam avadharaya. It matters not whether Rama betakes himself to the dark woods or leaps into the heart of the raging fire, but you will find me there before him. Verse 18. Harami viryat dukham te tamah suryaiva uditah devi pashyatu me viryam ragavah chaiva pashyatu. It shall be my care to place my valor and prowess at your service and put away grief and anxiety from you. This day my brother and yourself will behold the might of my arm. So, after this, Lakshmana takes a pause. He has said what he has to say. So, while Rama is willing to go off to the forest, Lakshmana says it is injustice. It is injustice. And when even a senior person becomes arrogant or loses sense of what is right and wrong, then he or she has to be punished. And Lakshmana is saying that Dasaratha is in this particular position. He has lost sight of what is right and what is wrong. He promised Rama yesterday that Rama is going to become the king of Ayodhya. So now how can he take that kingdom away from Rama and give it to Bharata because Kaikeyi is asking him to do so? It is not fair. And therefore Lakshmana says, "Oh my dear mother, wherever Rama goes, you can ensure that I go in front of him." So Lakshmana is proving two things. Number one, he's proving that he's not saying this just so that he doesn't have to suffer in the forest. So Rama and Lakshmana were always a wonderful pair. We saw in the second chapter of Ayodhya that even after their marriage, Bharata and Shatrughna went off to Bharata's grandfather's land, but Rama and Lakshmana were always together. So they were serving their father diligently. They used to go about to various cities and villages together and they would emerge victorious. So wherever Rama went, Lakshmana would also go. So if Rama is going to the forest, it is not that Lakshmana doesn't want to go to the forest because of which he is saying that Rama shouldn't go to the forest either. So that's why in verse number 16, he says that he is very attached to his brother Rama. So he says that tatvataha anuraktaihi asmi bhavena bhrataram. I am very attached to my brother Rama. And in verse number 17, he says, Deeptam agnim aranyam va yadi Ramaha prabhekshite pravishtam tatra mam devi tvam purvam avadharaya. Deeptam agnim, that means blazing fire. Aranyam, that means the forest. You can make certain that I will enter even before Rama. Vayadi Ramaha pravekshate, if Rama were to enter a deeptam agnim, that is a blazing fire, or aranyam, or the forest, pravishtam tatra mam devi tvam purvam avadharaya. I would have gone ahead of him. So this is Lakshmana. So Lakshmana states that he himself would jump into the fire or go ahead of Rama in the blazing fire or the forest so that Kaushalya knows that Rama is not alone. Just because Rama has received an exile, it doesn't mean that he's going to go through that exile by himself. Lakshmana is obviously going to be there beside him. And this 17th verse is also very important. He says that he will walk ahead of Rama. He will go ahead of Rama when Rama goes off into the forest. And this is very important. We will see that Sita Ma also makes a similar statement. And when they are walking in the forest, we will see how Rama makes certain that his bhaktas, Lakshmana and Sita Ma, he makes certain that his bhaktas' wishes are properly fulfilled. This is Lord Rama. So now let us get back to the 21st chapter. So after this, after speaking so, Lakshmana is quiet. Verse 19. Etattu vachanam shrutva Lakshmanasya mahatmanah uvacha Ramam Kaushalya rudanti shokalalasa. Hearing these words of Lakshmana, the great Kaushalya entirely gave up her anguish and weeping and spoke thus to Rama. So now Kaushalya's wounded heart has a renewed hope and joy because she knows that her son is not alone. Whether he is supposed to stay back in Ayodhya or whether he goes off to the forest, she now knows that Lakshmana will certainly be over there. Verse 20. Bhratuste vadatah putra Lakshmanasya shrutam tvaya yad atra anantaram tattvam kurushva yadi rochite. O my darling Rama, heard you the words that fell from the lips of your dear brother Lakshmana? They need no comment, and I leave it to your good sense to act as seems best. Verse 21. Nacha adharmyam vachah shrutva sapatnya mama bhashitam vihaya shoka santaptam gantum arhasi mam itah. You may say that a father's words are law to his son, but is this your father's command? Nay, it is but the insidious instigation of Kaikeyi, my rival and the evil genius of our king. Besides, it was all opposed to reason, to right, and to justice. Is it kind of you, is it dutiful to abandon me to my enemies, helpless, alone, and stricken with grief and misfortune? Verse 22. Dharmagnya yadi dharmishto dharmam charitum ichchasi shushrusha mam ihastah tvam chara dharmam anuttamam. O Rama, law and duty have no mysteries for you. You have set your heart upon fulfilling the dharma of carrying out your father's commands. But the mother is the highest and most reverent object that a man can have in this world. And therefore stay with me and devote yourself to my service. Verse 23. Shushrushur jananim putra svagrihe niyatah vasan parena tapasa yuktah kashipah tridivam gatah. I can assure you that there is no higher dharma and none more imperative. Kashyapa of yore stayed with his mother and rendered her faithful service and loving with restrained self. His noble tapasya was rewarded with the high regions of light, and he took his place among the patriarchs of the Prajapatis. Verse 24. Yatha eva raja pujyah te gauravena tatahi aham tvam na aham anujanami na gantavyam itah vanam. As your father is to you, so am I. He is worthy of your love and reverence, and so am I. His word is law unto you, and so is mine. Now, I like not your banishing yourself to the forest of Dandaka. You can never have my consent to it. Verse 25. Tvad viyogan na me karyam jivitena sukhena va tvaya saha mama shreyah trinanam api bhakshanam. What joy have I in life apart from you? Life itself is a curse to me unless I spend it by your side. I count it a privilege and pleasure to be with you, though I feed upon grass. Verse 26. Yadi tvam yasyasi vanam tvaktva mam shoka lalasam aham prayam iha asishye nahi shakshyami jivitum. And if you ever leave my side when I am assailed by misfortune and calamity, I will starve myself to death. Verse 27. Tatahastvam prapsyase putra nirayam loka vishrutam brahmahatyam iva adharmat samudraha saritam patihi. The ruler of the waters once had the misfortune to grieve the heart of his mother and expiated that lapse of filial duty by bitter experience of the hells that are reserved for the slayers of Brahmanas, and eternal misery shall be your lot here on earth. So, Mother Kaushalya responds to Lakshmana's statements that Rama is not supposed to go off to the forest. And she also plays the mother card. She says that she too is just as important to Rama as his father, King Dasaratha. And she doesn't consent to send Rama off into the forest. So she mentions that she is willing to eat even grass, if that means that she can stay beside him. So this is very good. And she also says that if Rama were to go off to the forest, she's going to starve herself to death. And she says that this is not very good. She gives the examples of two different people. One was Prajapati Kasyapa, who attained this great position because of his love and reverence towards his mother. And then another one, the Lord of the Ocean, who was cursed by a particular sage, and he produced the latter's wrath, and therefore he will attain hell. Now we will see Rama's reactions to Lakshmana and Kaushalya's statements in the next section. Jai Sitaram.